and they have a commitment that's firm and binding, maybe somehow they'll lose that school. And the reason they have that sense of anxiety, Mr. Speaker, is because they've heard this in the past. In fact, this very community had a school announced in their neighborhood. It was going to be built.
By whom?
In fact, the community went out with the work of staff people at the school board and community volunteers and identified a number of sites, only to be having that school taken away at the 11th hour and go to Bedford South.
Shame. By whom? Who did
Purely for political reasons, purely to alleviate or solidify an election promise made by a cabinet minister of a government of the day. And that's why those people have a great deal of cynicism and skepticism over how and when their new school will be built. Well, I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that I've done a great deal of work with that community to try to alleviate their concerns and try to address their issues of skepticism and cynicism. And I think we now have a community that not only believes their school is going to be built, but understands it will be built and is just waiting for it. Now, the honourable member from Dartmouth North asked when the school is going to be built. In fact, very, very soon. The time frame, Mr. Speaker, is that the school will be built and open for September of 2005. It would mean that you'll see a couple of years to build the school, a few months to site it, and some time to tender it out. And frankly, the community accepts that, albeit they'd like something sooner, but they understand the ability to build these schools. We all know in this House what happens when you fast-track schools. We've seen that process through the P3 process. We know what happens when governments make decisions to try to fast-track and speed up process. You know, mistakes get made. And I can point to a number of mistakes. It's real easy to do. It's easy for me as a member of this government or any member in this House to point to mistakes that were made during the P3 process. But what I'm trying to do here today is not necessarily do that. Although, albeit easy to do, what I want to do is take the high road in this one. I want to say that my community, the community that I represent, particularly the community of Kingswood, has worked very hard to ensure that the government that they elected is going to listen to them. But in addition to that, they also have worked very hard to ensure that the school board listens to them, because they now have issues with respect to citing that school and a temporary boundary. They have issues about where their children are going to go. I refer, Mr. Speaker, to an article in today's paper that seems to be pitting community against community, and that's not what the Kingswood residents and the people of Hammonds Plains are about. They don't think that it's beneficial for them to try to get into a match between another community over where their children should go to school on a temporary basis. They believe that they need the cooperation and the support of their school board and their school board member and the neighboring communities to help them, because they really have a problem. They need some short-term solutions to this overcrowding issue, and they need it now. At a number of public meetings, one as recently as 2 weeks ago, one about a month before that, with the school board chairman and the member for that area who happens to be the school board chairman present, I talked to the member and to the audience that was there. I think at that meeting there was 500 or 600 people. And one of the things that I said to that member and to that audience is that it's time for this government and for all governments to set aside their petty political differences, and for the school board and for the municipality and for the province to work together for the common interest of the students. And we've seen too often, way too often, where one level of government would use an issue to try to embarrass another level of government, where one level of government would use an issue to try to further their agenda, be it for supplementary funding, be it for the construction of a new high school or what have you. And from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of the parents of the children, and on behalf of the children, I think we owe it to them. We owe it to them to set aside those differences and to put them first. You know, our government has made a number of changes and a number of strides, including scrapping the P3 process. We know that you can't build every school in one day. We also know that the infrastructure, the school infrastructure in this province, was allowed to decline drastically over the period of time from 1993 to 1996. That's evidence that was given to us by the Auditor General's office, and that's a fact. And then what happens is you end up trying to play catch-up. And the P3 concept, which was supposed to catch up, never caught up. and you still have communities like Hammonds Plains, like the neighborhood of Kingswood, who have their children split up in 2 different schools and may end up seeing their children go to 5 schools in 5 years. And as a parent, I can say this, that no one likes that, Mr. Speaker. So I'm not going to condemn the previous government for their P3 process. I think they probably went down that road with the best interest of the children at mind, trying to resolve a very difficult political problem in an expedient time as possible. At the end of the day, it was a failure. I think everybody would recognize that. At the end of the day, it didn't do anything to resolve the overcrowding issues at Hammonds Plains. They were overcrowded with the P3 school they got. They were overcrowded with the expansion of the consolidated school, and they're overcrowded today. One of the things that I think will go a long way, in addition to building this school, would be a plan that would somehow bring the municipality into play and develop something that would, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but in this case, develop some sort of planning mechanisms that would see the municipality not able to develop at such a rapid growth that it jeopardizes children and families. And I think that, from my perspective, I would look forward to some kind of plan that envisioned developmental controls so the developers just don't simply waltz in, subdivide their 800 acres into small lots, and the next thing you know, you've got a school board wrestling with an issue, you've got a municipality wrestling with an issue, and you've got a province wrestling with an issue. So from my perspective, I can see that being a benefit. But on behalf of the people of Hammonds Plains, I was very pleased at the way that they were able to demonstrate clearly to me and to the minister and to this government their need for a school. It wasn't difficult for them to do because, frankly, 730 or 780 students with a rapid growth, Mr. Speaker, clearly demonstrates the need for a school in that community. And I think I'm out of time. Thank you.
The honourable member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is a rather serious topic that we're discussing here tonight because I don't think you can get any more important a topic than the education of your children and the facilities that are used to educate your children. And it affects each and every Nova Scotian. We know that whether it's our own children's education, our grandchildren, or whatever the case may be. Mr. Speaker, I'm also not here. I have no intention of trying to defend the P3 school process. None whatsoever. None whatsoever. But I can take a look at the PC process with a somewhat not jaundiced, non-jaundiced viewpoint. And I can say that if you take a look at the PC process, you saw 39 new schools built in this province. 39 new schools that the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union will tell you nobody has a problem with those schools. Problem with the process. Okay? There are problems. There are problems with contracts that had to be negotiated. And contracts always have problems, okay? Always. But I'm just saying, and these are the words of the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, love the schools, not the process. The schools, the students, the parents, the teachers, the principals will tell you that those facilities were needed. Those facilities are great facilities for the students of this province to be educated in right now. They don't have to worry about their health, their high tech. They have all the stuff that you need to give a student a good education in this province. Based on that alone, I'm not going to stand here and say that those schools built under the P3 school process are no good. Because ask the people in the communities whether or not they're serving their communities, and to a person, I think you'll be told, for the most part, yes, those schools were required. An ambitious project that at the time, okay, again, faulting no one, at the time, a government that was looking at, we need new schools, it's desperate, let's try something. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you look at this government, you look over the past 4 years, how many new schools have been built?
Let's hear how many.
8?
8.
No, I think
8?
maybe
11? Okay, I'm sorry, I could be off. And again, I'm not trying. And I agree with my honourable colleague from Sackville Beaverbank. This is too important an issue to play politics with, and I sincerely am not trying to play politics with this issue. I sincerely say to the people of Hammonds Plains and areas, congratulations to them. Congratulations to them for lobbying hard enough to get a commitment that there will be a new school built for their area. I would not, and especially the volunteers in that area, I would not for a moment say to anyone in this province that if you're getting a new school in your area, you certainly don't deserve it. It would never come from my lips. Mr. Speaker, I have served on school committees myself, my own community school, that of Bridgeport School, to try and stop the closure of that school. We live in an area of declining enrollments, which is a huge problem which is facing this province right now, but in particular in areas such as Cape Breton. Declining enrollments because, as we know, the funding for schools follows pupils, unfortunately, and if you have declining enrollments in that area, the funding's not there. Hence, you're left with the possibility of schools closing. We faced that possibility at my school. You've also run into circumstances where you run into such a situation as they find in Cape Breton Centre right now, in the community of Dominion, where a community starts sinking into the ground, community school starts sinking into the ground, and you're left with, well, what do we do in this situation? The students don't have a school any longer. The school board is left with a crisis, an emergency, and the province says there's nothing we can do about it because that school is not on the priority list. So and I'm not, no, that's the province saying that, not me. Now, what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, in that case, in the case of Dominion, is that there should be emergency funding available to help the people of Dominion, maintain and build their school that they require. Mr. Speaker, I need not tell anybody the importance of a school to its community or to its area. These are facilities, not just a building, not just a facility, but these are homes for our children where they go on a daily basis, where they are taught. They're taught a lot in our homes, but by gosh, they're taught a lot by our teachers in this province in their schools where they spend a great deal of the day. So it's not just a building. It means a lot more to the community. I would dare say a community without a school is not a real community in some cases, because you're built around activities that take place at your school. You're built around everything that goes on around your children's lives. So, of course, I'd say churches are up there with schools, and yes, at one time I would have said radio stations, but I don't. That used to be the case, but it's not the case anymore, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately. So, I say, and again, that it's a vital issue. There are some 466 schools, I'm told, in this province. So we know how huge an issue it is. And to pay for maintenance of those schools, to do the new construction that's required, to take care of an issue that is this huge, is going to require, number one, cooperation, I would suggest to the member from the government side that has been talking about this issue, and cooperation among all three parties in this legislature, which is why it's important, and I will not stand here, as I said, and play politics with this issue. I can't speak on behalf of anybody else. I'm just speaking on my own behalf, that I think, and again, I'm not following the rabbit tracks here, Mr. Speaker, of other members that may be going there. I'm not going there. To the community of Hammonds Plains, on its commitment that it made to lobbying government, to doing whatever had to be done to provide a new school for that area. It's basic. Yeah, and I know there's a list. I know there's a priority list. Well, it does. If you don't speak up, you don't get heard. That's as basic. It's as basic as that. And I'm sure whether the lobbying has been done in a public protest or behind closed doors or the individual MLAs or whatever, it's still lobbying. It's still lobbying. No, it's speaking up for what is rightfully yours. That's what it is in this instance. So to anybody in this province who has a new school built in their area, I say congratulations, because I know throughout this province those schools are desperately needed for our children and desperately needed for the communities. And we have to find a way. I think we have a responsibility as politicians, as legislators, to find a way around this problem. and to come up with a solution. That's where I think our responsibility is, not non-political, that it's our responsibility as legislators that we find once and for all a solution, that we can provide safe, we can provide adequate schools in this province for our children. So they're not faced with an uncertain future, they're not faced with bricks falling, they're not faced with unhealthy environments. They can get that safe education that everybody in this province deserves. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much time I have left, Mr. Speaker, but I think that certainly the member for Timberley Prospect certainly could use a little bit of extra time, so the last 30 seconds or so I'd certainly be willing to share with him. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member from Sackville-Beaver Bank for introducing this resolution. I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, I'll be sharing my time with my good friend from Cape Breton Centre, as he has a few comments about a very important issue, of course, in his community. Mr. Speaker, Monday evening I had the occasion to attend an important meeting at Sir John A. Macdonald High School. We talked about priority lists, we talked about the role of volunteers, we talked about the importance of making your voice heard. But one of the questions that was asked at that meeting, and the member from Chester St. Margaret's was at that meeting also, and one of the questions that was asked at that meeting was, who is Barry Barnett? Now, that was a question that was asked, and I'm quoting these parents who are concerned because that is a parent group of Sir John A. Macdonald High School. And the question was asked a number of times, a rhetorical question, just who is Barry Barnett? And I said to him that he was the MLA for the adjoining riding. He was a member of the Conservative caucus, and he had the pleasure a number of weeks ago to bring the Premier into his constituency, and along with the Minister of Education, make the very positive announcement that Hammonds Plains and the Kingswood area would be receiving a good school, and a new school, something that's badly needed. And I know that, Mr. Speaker, because my riding, although it's now going to be changed, incorporates part of the Hammonds Plains community. And I have friends of parents who have children that will be attending the still overcrowded portables in back of Hammonds Plains School. And I know that earlier the MLA from Sackville-Beaver Bank mentioned that teacher. I actually went to university with that teacher, and I know that she has spent many long years at Hammonds Plains Elementary and the overcrowding situation there. But the situation comes down to this, Mr. Speaker. There is reality and perception. And of course, we always hear of priority lists, and they are very important. Priority lists for school construction. Priority lists based upon the 8 new announcements that are going to be made. But can someone please come clean with the fact of what's on the priority list, how long has it been there, and of what significance have you determined the criteria for a priority list? Now, there are always occasions for emergencies. And my friend from Cape Breton Centre is going to bring that to the attention of the House in a few moments. But I want to bring an important matter to the attention of the members of this House, and that is that Sir John A. Macdonald is a neglected high school. I want to table, if I could please, an email from Doreen Pilon, who sent this to the Superintendent of Schools for HRSB and sent me a copy. I'm going to read from it, and then I'll table it if I could, Mr. Speaker. We are happy to hear that our children will be finally returning to a safer and healthier Sir John A. This was on March 3rd, incidentally. She says, and she goes on, we expect the promises made to our community by the Minister and the Department of Education to be honored by providing our children with either a totally refurbished school capable of delivering today's high school programs or a new school by the fall of 2005. Now, Ms. Pilon is putting the thing very much in clarity for me as the MLA. And knowing Doreen, she has the question which always comes back, and it's asked. When you don't have an open public priority list, what is the role of politics in the building of schools? We're not talking about paving roads. I mean, we do know in this province priority lists are in existence when it comes to paving roads, but is there politics involved in a priority list for schools? In the case of Hammonds Plains, the case was clear. statistically and numerically, and the amount of time that the community had to wait, Hammonds Plains deserved a new school. Point made. However, there are other areas in this province concerned about where they are on the priority list. Where are they on the renovation list? And this would be clear. This would be clearly identified for all Nova Scotians if the Department of Education would show the initiative and make such a list public. Make it open. Make it accessible. And people will then understand the criteria for where a particular school project is on the list. And then as we lead up to an election, we get announcements about paving. We get announcements about recreation facilities. We get announcements about schools. That's why there is the cynicism of politics in this province. That's why it must be cleared up, and it must be, after all, a recognition of the fact, based upon a clear criteria, where we build schools, when we build schools, and why we build schools. And I can tell you that Doreen Pilon or Pam Damone or many of the other people that I am fortunate enough to represent in the community of Timberlea Prospect, we are not going to do anything more than make as much pressure, to bring as much pressure as possible on this government, to make as much noise as possible so that this Minister of Education and this Premier, because one of the most damaging things in the 1999 and 1998 election were the members of the third party who stuck those stickers on their signs, "We build schools." And there was an opportunity in a growing community to keep the politics out of building schools. The option was there. The people of Timberlea Prospect had their choice. They made their choice. They did not elect the Liberal candidate in 98. They did not elect the Liberal candidate in 99 because of the fact that politics has a role in the building of schools according to that government when they were in that place. And that is unacceptable. To the people of Hammonds Plains, I congratulate them on their efforts. I recognize the MLA for Sackville-Beaverbank for the role that he has played in the process, and I look forward to the support of the MLA from Chester St. Margaret's as he and I, along with our community, will work to have a new, improved, safe Sir John A. Macdonald. I'd like to share my time with my friend from Cape Breton Centre.
The honourable member for Cape Breton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, let me set out my remarks by saying congratulations to the member from Sackville-Beaverbank on getting the proposal for a new school and bringing this forward. Because as the previous speakers have said, this is not about, or should not be about, my area over your area. It should be over need. And that's very important because, you know, as the member from Glace Bay had brought up about the McDonald complex, and spoke, and he said a very, very telling line about dollars following students. And yes, that should be part of the criteria. You know, you just shouldn't go in the middle of wilderness and build a school, and the theory of build it and they will come. I realize that. But education has to be about a whole range of community efforts. That is, has to be educational, has to be social, and has to be economic. And I believe in the government turning its back on reconstruction of a new McDonald's complex is just doing that, is looking at that very narrow line of saying, we have an excess of classrooms here that we don't have to fill, and therefore it's fine to take the heart and soul of a community, which is a school, Mr. Speaker. You know, I could look at you straight in the eye, Mr. Speaker, and say, you have something similar in your own riding around your arena. You know that things like arena, while it is a sports and recreation facility, it is much more to that to your community. It's a gathering place, whether it's in the winter for ice hockey events or the summer for dances or homecomings or whatever. So we cannot look at these locations and narrowly say, this is what it's all about. It's about, you have 10 classrooms, we have 10 empty classrooms over here, we can fill them. We've just seen today, as a matter of fact, in the Cape Breton Post, I saw there's an elementary complex being built in Sydney. And because the Department of Education and a local Catholic parish couldn't get together on the price of sale of the land. Now they're going to downscale the recreation facilities and make it, instead of a large, we would call it adult size, if you will, soccer pitch, they're going to give what they call a mini soccer pitch. Now, I mean, we're talking an acre or two of land. I mean, jumpins, can't you get together on that? Can you see the value of that, the recreational aspects? But, you know, I think it's this narrow-mindedness of just that one thing. And I would hope, you know, that, in my case, it's not just a provincial issue. And I've said this before in the House, that the federal government bears responsibility here, because in my instance, where we lost the complex was because of underground subterranean mining. And therefore, I think they should come to the table and say to the provincial government, you know, we're willing to take our share and put it in, because, you know, we use that community for an energy source for years. I think it's only fair that we come back to the table and help that community all around. So, you know, we're fast coming to the end of our allotted time here tonight, Mr. Speaker, and so I would congratulate that member, and I hope the government will once and for all see the wisdom of you cannot look at education just as students. If you've got 10 students and you put them in here and your problem is solved, that's not the way. I think they have to look at the social component and the economic component, and I think if they did that in its fullness, that they would realize the problems that face a community like Dominion, and then build that school and move it forward, and to say, you know, if economic prosperity is around the corner for industrial Cape Breton, then Dominion will be there to enjoy that and have an area that would attract young families and watch it grow like the rest of this great province. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I'll take my place. Thank the member again for bringing this forward, and wishing him well in the endeavors of having that school constructed.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the members for taking part in the debate this evening. We are adjourned till tomorrow at noon hour.